How are you, my friend?
Good, Shasi. Always great to speak with you.
Anyway, Joe, great to catch up with you. This is phase two or part two, really, of our two-part series that we said we would do, mostly in the service, of the industry, the patients, and what we're all trying to do differently, but together for the same common goal, which is safety, patient care, and trying to get great outcomes and great education, things like that. So, let me just recap what we spoke about last time. Last time we spoke about the med spa industry, which mostly focused on compliance, right? Training, compliance, and to use proper technology to have good oversight and things like that, and how to be prepared properly so that you don't get into any legal or other trouble. Legal trouble is one thing, but really you don't want to put patients in any kind of medical trouble. That's the more important thing. We always seem to lead with legal because it's almost like CYA type of thing, but our modus operandi should be saving the patient, making sure the patient's okay. That's really should be the focus of all conversations. Legal is secondary in nature, as true doctors should be. Anyway, so that was the first part. So today, I'd like to focus and get your thoughts on the business side of the med spa industry. I highly, respect your background and you as a thought leader in this space because you've been working in this med spa kind of aesthetic space for a very long time, and you come across so many industries, and you are sought out with industries to help guide, counsel, nurture, teach so many things. So let's start with the business side of it. So the very first question is 2024. I guess early April now. Tell me your crystal ball kind of prognostic, futuristic kind of predictions of how the rest of the year is going to be.
Every day that I listen to the news and some of the business stations, and I keep thinking to myself, when is this house of cards going to collapse? Because, you hear about these high interest rates, you hear about people being laid off, you hear about businesses collapsing, you hear about California increasing the minimum wage to $20 per hour, even for some of these small companies that can't afford to stay in business like that. And I keep thinking to myself, like, when is the shoe going to fall? Like, how are we propping this up? And I think that we are in for some rough economic times ahead. I think things are slowing down in the aesthetic industry, even though it's one of the last industries to be affected in some ways. The higher priced items, the higher margin items, the higher ticket items, people are just sort of holding back a little bit now. There's a little bit of hesitation where there wasn't previously. So I think that 2024 is going to end up not being a great economic time for us. I think some of the businesses that are operating on very small margins are probably not going to survive. I think, particularly with the election coming up soon, they're going to do everything in their power to kind of keep things going. But inevitably, the weight of all the stuff that's happened, all this borrowed money, all these people living on credit card debt rising up, interest rates staying high, people living paycheck to paycheck. I think it's going to be tough. I really do. And I think people don't want to admit it because it's great right now. But I think all of a sudden things are going to fall. And then once they start, it's going to all unravel.
So exactly right. That's kind of has been my observation, and so I see a tremendous amount of uber confidence, especially from the investment side, from institutional investment side, etc., that seem to be very bullish, and there's a lot of consolidation happening. There's entrepreneurs who have been successful in other industries are coming in, opening up as entrepreneurs in this industry. Where do you think they're getting their confidence from? Are they seeing something different that an average physician like you or I are not seeing? What are your thoughts?
I think they're seeing that it's self-pay, that it's outside of the world of insurance, that it's disposable income. And when the economy is good, the sky's the limit in the aesthetic industry because even average or non-average providers, below average providers can actually do okay. The demand is so high right now that they're just counting their dollars. The problem is that invariably the lack of quality care, the lack of good outcomes is going to catch up with us all. And sure, a good med spa, run by people who are working compliantly, who are getting great outcomes, who are well trained, they're going to do well. They're going to do well in almost any environment. But the ones that aren't, the ones that are, doing Groupons or whatever, discount opportunity they can find, those are going to suffer and not do well. And I think as the economy drags down, as things suddenly hit people, the med spa space is going to contract a little bit. That's what I predict.
Mhm. So If you were to step back and take a look at the types of med spas that are in activity today, you have plastic surgeons like you and I, who are running a med spa as part of our practice, so to speak. You have a unique model that's completely outside of the norm that we talked about last time. But yeah, as an average plastic surgeon, in my case at least, a typical plastic surgeon, I should say, we have med spas as a part of our practice, but it's never the primary focus in a sense. And then another model is you have a lot of non-core physicians who are, just other types of physicians who may be ER doctors, who may be anesthesiologists, who may be, whatever. They are also opening up med spas, pain medicine doctor, et cetera, that are increasing their service line to kind of have traffic, foot traffic, and therefore consumer services that they can offer. Then you have another person who is really the I don't want to even call tiered structure in a sense because nobody likes those terms anymore, but you have nurse practitioners and physician's assistants and maybe even some nurses who want to be entrepreneurs and have their own business, so they're on their own boss, they're opening up on their own. And many states are now allowing such corporate kind of structures of medicine. And then you have the big guys who are the money guys who are trying to open up in a bigger scalable model. Those are the categories that I'm seeing. And so from your perspective, again, give us your thoughts on all these structural businesses.
I think physician-led practices will do well. I think they have the understanding about compliance, good outcomes, safety, and all those sorts of things. Even physicians that aren't particularly trained like we are as plastic surgeons, and they will do okay because they're smart enough, they've got deep enough pockets, they've got presumably a base of patients that they've treated in their other specialty, whatever it was, primary care, OBGYN, whatever it is. And I've seen those people do well. They're smart, they understand business a bit, they'll do okay. RNs, NPs, PAs, a little bit more troublesome. Most of those practitioners, are fairly comfortable injecting patients, neurotoxins, fillers, that sort of stuff. But those products and services are becoming commoditized as we speak. The prices are going lower and lower. I saw something on social media the other day about a private equity group that's going public, or maybe just went public, whatever. And they're offering Dysport at $4 a unit for a year, guaranteed, if you buy their, their program, whatever it is. And I looked at my wife and said, $4 a unit. It costs $60 a unit to purchase it. So how can they possibly, So then I realized, well, one Dysport unit equals 3 Botox units. So they're really charging $12 a unit. So I got online and I sort of answered them back. I said, wait a minute, you're kind of misleading people because, you're really charging 12, and I'm sure they deleted it as soon as I wrote it. But I said, we have to be honest with people, right? But the PE groups are ruthless. They don't really care about patients. They don't really honestly care about compliance. They don't really care about anything except creating a multiple and selling it to a bigger fish. So they'll survive in the short run because they'll fire people, they'll consolidate services, they'll do whatever they have to do to sell it to the next group. They'll ruin the business, they'll injure people, they'll get lawsuits filed against them, but they'll sell it before any of this stuff happens. So they'll be okay. But the people in the middle, the nurse practitioners, the RNs who are trying to scale and create a real business model, I think are going to have trouble because, as I said, these services are becoming commoditized, for like the example I just gave you. So their margins shrink, and they don't understand really very well about business and about margins and about fixed overhead and all this stuff. So they're there trying to compete with everyone around them who's doing exactly the same thing, and they keep lowering prices. And I try to encourage them, you really have to have other sources of revenue. You have to have estheticians who are doing skincare products and skincare treatments. You need some energy-based treatments to create revenue while you're not there. You need to offer full services because, as I recognized early on, you have to offer patients everything. You have to be a full service place because someone's not going to just go to you for Botox and then go somewhere else for fillers, then go somewhere else for laser hair removal, and then go somewhere else for a facial. If they can go to one place where they have all that, that's where they're going to go. So I've been constantly encouraging, and at the MAP meeting, I was encouraging people to sort of start creating other sources of revenue, bring in other medical professionals that you can see at this meeting in terms of what they do for the industry. And once you have a diversified set of services like we're fortunate to have, because we can also offer surgery and all the things surrounding it,
Mhm.
then you have a chance to survive. But if you can't live, you can't survive on neurotoxins and fillers alone. So I think that group of people who don't grow are going to just not be able to do business because their margins will be minuscule. They'll actually be losing money trying to do business. So I see it as kind of those three tiers, and I think the physicians will be the ones that will survive and survive well because we're smart enough and have been experienced enough and have patients, that we can call on, and we can provide them with pretty much any service they need if they really want it. But the PE groups are really, doing a disservice to the industry, doing disservice to patients. They're rewarding their investors as I guess they're supposed to do. But we have to be strong in the face of that and say, no, we are going to be more concerned about patients and compliance because in the end, these guys are going to come up against some legal battles, I believe, in the compliance realm, and the other people will fall out and end up working for us.
Mhm. Mhm. So like how do you recommend, like, for example, there's many new residents that come out and they want to open up a practice or join a practice, and maybe there's a thought of having a med spa. So how do you think is an ideal way for a physician to set up a practice, like that has a med spa component to it and run it well?
Yeah. I think it would be really difficult for someone coming out of residency to do it because they just don't have the wherewithal to understand. The industry is really one of the hardest to understand, and many of these private equity guys that we've come across who want to, scale everything up, it's way different than any other business model they've ever worked on. So the fact that this is really all about having good providers give good outcomes, and you just can't like pick and match providers and throw people in, or you can, but you're not going to get good outcomes. And that rate limiting step is the rate limiting step in all of the med spa space. So they're coming up against that now and coming up to people like me and other people who have schools saying, hey, like, how do we find good providers? And I like, you don't find them, you make them, and they're hard to make, and they're hard, and once they get good, they go off on their, it's a real challenge. But I think in the med spa space itself, it's really a dangerous place to be if you don't know. So if you're just coming out of residency, I don't think I would never advise someone to do it. I would say go into practice from whatever you've trained in, get a patient base, understand how to take care of patients, understand how to get good outcomes. And then, if you want to open a med spa, think about partnering with someone or think about going in with someone who already has done it or becoming part of something where you get that intimate knowledge and, working with someone who's done it or working in a med spa space is really the only way to get that understanding. But I'm thinking like if you're coming out of residency and you're looking at starting a med spa, what have you been spending all these years doing? Like you've been studying like OBGYN or internal medicine or surgery for all these years. If you're coming out looking to start a med spa, I mean, that's like a little shocking to me. Like why would you do that? I think it's more like the physicians who are out there and they've sort of honed their craft and just sort of like, you know what? I don't enjoy being a primary care doctor anymore. I work really hard. I take really good care of my patients. I never see my family. I can barely go on vacations. I'm barely covering my overhead. My reimbursements keep going down and down and down. I've got to find something else. And I'm smart enough to try to flex or, twist on that and rotate on that and make something happen. They'll succeed, particularly if they come to someone like you or me and say, hey, can you help me? And that's a whole nother consulting arm that I think can be very successful, because obviously that's sort of the easiest way to do it. But in and of itself, it's very, very hard, and you need someone who is either an expert in, consulting work for med spas, who's done it multiple times, has formulaic, solutions they can give you, who says these are all the steps you have to take, or you partner with someone who's doing it, is willing to help you and kind of show you the ropes.
Well, then I guess let's take it to the next level. So what about someone who's a core plastic surgeon or a dermatologist or somebody who's in the field, and they've been in practice for some years? What is the best way for them to kind of start the med spa component, like
Yeah.
and to be successful, not just as a side kind of a step sister or something like that, but something that you kind of do it with an intention of making it productive.
Yeah. So that's a good situation to be in because you have some knowledge of the space, you have some experience in the space, and you just want to sort of do more of it on your own. Most of the physicians do not want to do it themselves, right? Because they're still doing whatever they're doing to create their plastic surgery or whatever practice. So they want to hire people to do it for them, which works. The trouble is finding really good people to do it that you can trust, and sometimes you have to train them yourself, which is I think preferable, or send them to some place like our school, the Aesthetic Mentor, where we can really we can craft a whole curriculum for nurses or NPs or PAs to create really good providers. And once you get the providers, then you have to, unfortunately, you have to build them up slowly. And we have models for this where they've got to get the basics of neurotoxins and fillers, but they also have to get trained in energy-based devices and skincare and all these kinds of things, because again, you need that sort of holistic full complement of services to keep and maintaining those patients. And then you constantly have to introduce new things. So there is a formula for it. But it's complex and it's slow and it's hard and it's painful, but it will pay off if you follow the steps.
How long in your observations have you noticed like somebody starts the med spa component to have a reasonably productive practice, and whatever that productive, you can define on your own, but one can define on their own, but how long do you think it generally will take?
So it really depends on who you find. If you find a nurse practitioner, for example, who's, let's say, been on her own for a while and she's just like, I can't run this business anymore. I'd rather just show up and work for somebody and get a paycheck and go home to my family. I don't want to be here late at night doing payroll and doing HR stuff and worrying about this and worrying about that. You can get started right away and be profitable and prolific, because you presumably have a stable base of patients, and you can say, hey, now we're introducing the latest greatest injector who tomorrow can see you. You can bring in an esthetician to start doing free facial treatments on them, skin diamond glows or whatever you like. So you can start doing that pretty quickly, but if you can't find good providers or find providers that are getting bad outcomes, that's actually going to hurt you. It's going to really slow down your scaling, because one bad, two bad, three bad outcomes, and everybody in town knows about it, right? And it's really hard. So the key is to be able to tap into that pool of providers and figure out how to sort of extract from that group the best providers, and then you can scale very quickly.
So
But one
so
other thing I'll
you
say about that.
yeah, go ahead.
If you take, and I've had this happen to myself many times. You take someone out of your school, you take someone who comes in for training, and you're like, you have all the tools, you're intelligent, you look the part, you speak the part, you've got great motor skills, you're gentle with your hands, the patient's like, all those things that you look for in someone. And we can identify them fairly quickly, right in their training, and we pull them out of the training, or maybe they've actually gone somewhere else and they've been a provider and they've done it successfully. The question I would then answer is, well, I always get asked, how long does it take to be considered like a really good injector, right? And every time I answer the question, the time period goes up. So now I'm up to around 5 years, somewhere between 2 and 5. 2 would be exceptional, like just out of this world. But the average would be between 3 and 5 years. That's someone full-time doing it all the time, because it takes that long to see enough patients back and understand and tweak your results, tweak your techniques, try new things, get rid of old things, try new products, to figure out what it is that you're really good at, how you get best results, how you get predictable results. And, for example, Allergan won't hire you as a trainer until you've had at least 5 years of experience, doing very productive work. And I think that's right. And even some of my own providers who I've had for 3 or 4 years, still to this day, often ask me questions that I'm shocked they ask me, or get complications that I'm shocked that they get, when I'm the one, teaching them the anatomy, showing them, and they still are making mistakes that I feel like they shouldn't be making at their stage. So it takes a long time. And this as a surgeon, like, you can do surgery day one, but at what point did you consider yourself a good, very good, or excellent surgeon? I mean, I don't know how to answer that, but I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts are.
Well, I do train residents from the Cleveland Clinic here, and I do have medical students, and other students do come rotate with me. And I tell them this personally all the time, which some people take seriously, other people laugh at it. But I used to tell them, when I was a first year resident, I was the fastest resident in the hospital. I thought I had a Superman cape, and I would be the first one, try to hustle and try to do everything I can. So I felt like I was on top of the world, but it was all confidence without any clarity whatsoever. I was just trying to show off, I suppose, or just get it all in. But I tell them, that when I was a senior resident and a chief resident, I was the slowest one, because you realize how many ways you can hurt somebody and how much complexity there is in, understanding a situation with multifaceted nuances and trying to, kind of tailor something that works for them predictably, long term, safe, and all that. So you kind of let go of the hubris and become humble. So I think also, if I just factor my residency, total with fellowship was about 8 years. So somewhere between 5 and 8 years where I really felt very good about things. And now I'm still, like, every day, continue to feel like I'm learning more and exploring more. So that's kind of been my experience. But that's from the clinical side. How about the business side? How long do you think a physician that's never been trained can truly learn the business of medicine?
I think it also takes years. I think it takes years for people to understand the intricacies of how it works and how to maximize your profit margin, how to incentivize your employees without overpaying them, how to get the most out of them, and also encourage them, how to continue educating them. It's a really fine balance, and it changes all the time. But I think most of us, I mean, you're different. You've been trained in business. Most of us never have been trained in business, so we learn the hard way. We learn by trial and error and make mistakes and have consultants come and help us, or call someone like you and say, how would you do this? So I think, again, it's a continued struggle to learn, and I'm still learning stuff today. We had a meeting today that I was like, I've never really thought about those concepts before, but they really make sense to me. So I think that you can get up and running quickly, but I think it takes years of trying and failing, or trying and sort of succeeding, to really understand how to do it. Because we're in a situation where we're on our own. We don't get any insurance reimbursement. There's competitors all around us. We lose providers to other people. So it's like a constant state of trying to catch up, or stay ahead. And it never stops. So I don't know that you ever get to a point where you're like, I've made it. This business model is never going to change. I'm never going to get any worse at my craft. Those are the dangerous feelings to have. So I think, there's a sense of, like, you've always got to keep moving or else you die. You've got to keep feeding yourself. You've got to keep trying to get better, even when you're good, because once you stop, I think things start to go downhill.
So this is where, I guess, if you talk to, we are physicians, who are also small businessmen in a sense, and we're independent physicians, right? We're not part of any big group. And so we run actual businesses. We're small businessmen. So when you talk to consultants in the industry, they talk about, square foot utilization rates, and the device utilization rates, and profit margins and gross margins and net income and gross income, and unit values, and so many different things. Do you think of your business in that fashion? Do you train people in your school on the business side of it as well, or are you purely clinical?
Yeah, so we do have business courses in our school, because we recognize the most challenging thing for providers, for medically trained people, is business, because we've had no training in it. We've never really had to think about it. We've never had to think about profit and loss or margins or anything like that. We show up for work, we do our work, we get paid, and go home, for the most part. We, as individual business owners, have had to think about that, certainly. So yeah, we recognize the importance of training people in business. We're trying to actually build that part of our practice up, of our school up a lot, because that is probably the critical point between success and failure. And as I tell the patients, the students in class, the easiest part of this day is going to be me teaching you a skill, because you're all used to someone teaching you a skill, and you're good at adopting that and getting better at it. But what is really going to be hard for you is to take the skill that you learned today, make it into a business. That's the really challenging part. And that's where most people fail. And many of these mid-level people are sort of thinking, I don't really think I want to do that. I want to just work for someone like you, and just, show up for work like they always used to do, get paid for what I do, and go home and spend time with my family. The people that decide to go into business for themselves have a real challenge, and most of them operate at the margin or slightly below margin in debt for a couple of years, until they figure out how to do it well, and then they start becoming profitable. So it is a real challenge, and I do encourage them to seek business, consult help. And at the MAP meeting, we did have a number of very highly educated individuals who were training people in how to get into a med spa. And one of my wife's friends who has no medical. She like worked for Nike. She was like the COO of Nike or one of those really big shoe companies, and she did it for many years, very successful. But she's done with shoes, and but she's a really smart business person. So she came to the MAP meeting like with no knowledge, no idea what, and she sat in the business room where you were for a while and sat through every single day, the whole day, and at the end of it, signed up one of the consultants, who was there selling their services. You know her very well. Her first name is Terry, and she bought this packet of information and conversations for like I don't know 37,000, something like that. And they have meetings every week, and she has homework every week, and she has a roadmap, for success. And she said it was the best $37,000 I've ever spent. And she's comes over to my house and asks me my impression of what she's doing, and I help her sort of do some of the homework about different devices that she doesn't have knowledge of and this kind of things. And she said, "Hey, how would you like to be a partner with me in this med spa?" And I looked at what she was doing, and she's doing things exactly the way she's supposed to. And I think she's going to be very successful. But, she, as a business person, understood I've got to invest money to make money. I've got to come up with a fairly big chunk of money up front, and then I've got to borrow money. But I'm not worried about that because I believe in the success of this person. I believe in what they're showing me. This doctor is validating that these are, actually good steps to take, and we're going to do this. So I think that, that's going to become a necessary thing for most people because it's just beyond the scope of anyone individually to be able to, kind of attain that much knowledge without help from the outside.
Mhm. So do you recommend many physicians or, whoever, is trying to do this to seek, consultants to kind of help them get going, or do you think it's something that they could possibly learn on their own?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. I think at least to get started on the one thing you don't want to do is start off the wrong way. Like a lot of people just buy all this equipment, spend all this money with no one to run them equipment. This is true of so many doctors that have come to me and said, "Hey, can you help me out? I've had these 3 lasers that are collecting dust in my, in my treatment room. I've got no one." They don't even think about like a strategy or a plan. They just are easy marks for some company saying, "Hey, you got to have this, you got to have this, you got to have this." And they get it, but they don't have any way of making money with it. And they hire somebody and then they leave and they don't know, those kinds of things. And they can't train them on it themselves because they've never been trained on it. So I think getting a consultant at the beginning is a really good idea, at least to sort of get started and figure out like what are the right steps to take. Because you don't want to make a misstep at the beginning and then end up paying for it for the rest of your life. So get off to a good start, understand what the goals are. And then, most people, and I think on our field are smart enough to like attain them and figure out what to do because they've run presumably practices like ours. But I think getting started is a good idea. And just having someone you can call, even on a PRN basis, to say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this issue with these 2 nurses. Like one of them is like a really good provider, but she's poison for the office. The other isn't as good a provider, but she's a wonderful person." Those kinds of decisions you have to make without really understanding. And they could come and really be a big help in that situation.
So I'm going to deviate just a little bit from this. So another interesting, dynamic that's happening in this industry is that now beyond the injectables and energy devices for aesthetic purposes, there's also this medical aesthetics, which has to do with nutrition, weight management, weight loss, things of that nature. Give me your input into that world, because everybody again comes out with programs and they just kind of add it on as another thing just to attract more patients in. But at what point do you think it becomes too diluted, too broad, focus, losing focus, things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's a really good development in our industry. I mean, just the whole weight loss thing has transformed the industry, because health is really more than just having your face full of fillers and having no wrinkles on your face. Health is about all the things you mentioned, just the holistic approach to eating healthy, being healthy, living a healthy life, being not overweight, not taking excesses of alcohol, smoking, all the things that we know. But these are lifestyle changes because I think we're all living longer now. I mean, my father died when he was like exactly my age, and it always makes me nervous to think about that, because I feel like I'm healthy and I feel like I'm doing okay. But I think all these other things should be part because we're physicians, right? We're healthcare providers. We're people who went into this to help people, and if we can do something like, I think this weight loss thing has been a great boon to our practice because it's helped so many people live better lifestyles now, get off their diabetes drugs, just become healthier, and it makes their results better. It makes it easier to treat them. You know, there are other things that come up that we have to treat as a result of the weight loss. But I think that this holistic approach should be what we all embrace because it's all about making people feel better, look better, yeah, but feel better, live healthier lives because that's, I think, what we all want. So I'm all in on it.
So how do you recommend a practice bring that on? Do you think it should be done by another kind of a expert physician or a nurse practitioner who can kind of own that component and have somebody else run, the other aesthetic services, or how do you think about it?
Yeah. So when you ask companies about, how can I be successful with your device or with your program or with your whatever, they almost always say kind of the same thing. Like if you just bring in a treatment program to your practice and say, oh, I really believe in this, and your providers aren't on board or really excited about it, nothing's going to happen. Like when we used to come in and skincare companies and say, Dr. Russo, this is the greatest skincare line. And I would say, okay, let's do it. Then I would give it to my my estheticians or whatever, and they didn't like it. They wouldn't sell it. They wouldn't sell it because they don't believe in it. They didn't feel passion for it. They didn't feel like compelled to do it. But if you brought in something they really liked, they would sell it. So whenever someone came in, I said, you know what? Don't talk to me. I buy everything. Don't talk to me. Talk to the people who would be providing it, and they'll talk to me. And if they want it, I'll get it. If they don't, I want. And they're very honest about it, right? So I think that kind of thing happens. But if you're going to get a device or bring in a weight loss program or some skin health or some other nutritional stuff, you have to have someone who says, I really want to do that. I really want to bring that service to this practice because I have a passion for it. I understand it. I really believe everyone should be on it and they will do well. And so that's really the key, is to find someone who wants to own that device or that program, and you'll ultimately be very successful.
So I guess going back to some themes from the last webinar that we did, in order to understand the business metrics, the value of various devices or the return on investment, all these components, square foot usage, all those sorts of things, that's data. Obviously, software and some kind of tool is necessary for you to measure it, right? So, how does Symplast help you kind of hopefully extract some of the data, and how is that useful, and how do you use it?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I will say is that back to our compliance issue, as you know, compliance is the most important thing. And without Symplast, we really wouldn't have a very compliant system. So it allows us to offer compliance to people. It's like the wild, wild west where everyone's out there shooting each other and there's no laws or rules, but it allows us to bring people together who want to work by laws and understand compliance and be compliant so they don't lose their license or injure patients and get the whole industry in trouble. So you offer us the ability to offer real-time orders and to be able to offer them compliance without compliance, like all the things we've talked about so far, without a compliant practice, you really have nothing, and you're at the risk of losing everything, even sometimes over minor things. So if anyone's out there practicing in a non-compliant fashion, I would wholeheartedly urge you to just stop, call Symplast, get a system going where you can be compliant, because why would you do all this, spend all this time, money, life, energy, and be like basically walking on a high wire with no net below you? Symplast is the safety net that allows you to practice in a compliant fashion and because if you're practicing it illegally and you have a complication or problem, and you get sued or get reported to the Board of Registration of Nursing Medicine or whatever, and they say, let me see the orders, let me see the whole chart, and you don't have it, you're defenseless. You are negligent per se, and you lose your license or whatever happens to you. It's not a good thing. So that is great. And Symplast, since you guys understand the world of the med spa and understand medicine, the data that we can get allows us to be better with our practices, understanding where the patients are coming from, where they're located, what we need to do to market to them. All the facts that you need to run a successful business are part of Symplast. And I know that you guys are constantly trying to upgrade and improve and allow us to get more and more data. Because you and I talked about this, I don't know how many years ago now, but you were the first guy who really focused on like the whole concept of big data, right? Like the more data you have, the better predictor you can be of the future, because you can see the future through the data that you've already collected. And so by understanding the trends, understanding what people want, understanding, what's important to them, also their demographics, all this stuff, you can see what the trends are. You can be part of that. You can get ahead of it, and you can be predictive like you are.
Yeah. So this is the thing. So I think, in summary, if you were to look at this, this year, maybe for the foreseeable future, the economy is a bit soft. We don't know exactly, but seems like maybe there'll be some rough waters. Solid practices that are run by good physicians, and have a compliant, well run, with good, safety nets, I think are the ones that are going to survive and, continue to do well. Maybe there'll be some amount of, you know, attrition, perhaps, is a good word, and some changes that may be in the horizon. It's always a good idea to partner with somebody that may help you so that you don't make mistakes. I think is another point that you made, and I think utilizing maybe some consultants if necessary is a concept that I think would be good, whether it's another physician, whether it's another business person, but somebody to explain the business metrics of how to look at all these things, I think would be helpful. I think you said also you have to put money in as an investment to get money out, and you have to believe in it, right? Otherwise, that investment also becomes very difficult to make, because otherwise you just feel like you're always nervous about it. So you have to do that, and therefore, I mean, it's not a good thing for people who don't have that capital available to start something and kind of go halfway and have to fail.
Yes.
And then the next thing you said is about the technology, to ensure that you have adequate technology to make sure that you're able to run an efficient, data-driven, predictive, kind of good metrics based, business, because that's what you have to do. Patient care is exactly how we do. We look at them as a patient from a clinical perspective. We also look at them, with data, with vitals, all kinds of things. So we need both in the business. If you think of it that way, you also need that also. And so I think those are the summary points. And as far as the big financial institutions, I believe your summary was that on net, maybe, I don't know if it's good for the industry, bad for the industry, but it is a phase that we're all going through. And the outcomes are maybe to be determined, or maybe already determined, and they may not be favorable, I think is your feeling. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I will say one other thing. I think the opportunity in this space is incredible. I think it's really one of the best things to be in if you can navigate the space correctly, because health and wellness and longevity, who doesn't want that, right? I mean, that's kind of what everyone's seeking. And the pool of patients that are coming here is out of control. The problem is we don't have enough good providers to supply good outcomes to those patients. So it's a little bit of a rocky road. But if you have that magic formula, if you figured out how to exist in this space and treat people well and get good outcomes, the sky's the limit. If you haven't, it's going to be a real struggle.
Yeah. Well, Joe, as usual, thank you so much for this second part of the conversation, and I'm sure I will reach out to you to discuss other aspects of the industry as well, because I do think, like, if I were to be listening to this, I would find it very valuable to hear from somebody like you talk about and set the ground reality of how things should be.
Well, thank you. It's always a
So
pleasure. Sometimes when you ask me these questions, it's very thought-provoking for me, and it kind of makes me move in other directions. And I really appreciate the help, the thoughts that you bring forward, because you are a visionary, and I always enjoy talking to you.
thank you, Joe. Have a great evening.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.